What is a flying fish? Why are people filling them with foam and putting them in a wind tunnel? Why are Nicki and Rihanna beefing about them? Oh, hey girl, hey. Today we're talking about flying fish. Fish. Welcome back to the channel. I was watching the new Planet Earth 3 documentary with Sir David Attenborough hosting it. Incredible. Would highly recommend. Very fun. See lots of animals and whatnot. There was a segment on flying fish there, and I saw those bad boys. I'm like, wow, that's so cool. Fish? Flying? So I got very excited about these fish. Started researching a little bit more about what they are and whatnot. Firstly, what is a flying fish? A fish that flies. Not really. It's a bit of a lie. It doesn't fly, it glides. So flying fish don't actually flap their wings. They just glide. They live mainly in tropical or subtropical waters, usually around the Atlantic or the Pacific Ocean. They like the water to be pretty warm. Anything less than 20 degrees Celsius, they get a bit too chilly and then they can't fly. They obviously hang out near the surface of the water so they can come out and fly. They mostly eat plankton and maybe some other small fish or crustaceans, and they live for about 5 years. There are about 64 different species of flying fish, and they come in two main categories. We've got ones with 2 wings, and then we've got ones with 4 wings. All flying fish have enlarged pectoral fins, which are their wings. They say that these are hypertrophied as opposed to atrophied, which means smaller. Hypertrophied, bigger, wow, fun new words. And the ones with 4 wings also have enlarged pelvic fins. It's thought that flying fish evolved from these other fish called half-beaks. So it's thought the half-beaks got bigger fins, which allowed them to taxi along the surface of the water, but they couldn't glide yet. But then over time, the center of mass moved forward, which allowed for gliding. Because the other ones, if they tried to glide, they would just stall because their center of mass is too far back. So the combination of having enlarged fins and also a center of mass that's moved forward allowed the flying fish to begin gliding. Another fun thing that a flying fish has that makes it great for being in the water and also flying up into the air is their eyes have a flattened pyramidal cornea. Yep, that's a thing. But that allows them to see in both the water and in air. So clearly they are designed for flying. So the pectoral fins, the ones at the front of the fish, they do most of the lifting. While in the 4-winged fish, they also have the pelvic fins and they help with stability. Now that allows the 4-winged flying fish to grow to much larger sizes than the 2-winged ones. The 2-winged ones, they just get a bit unstable if they get too big. So the average size of a flying fish is about 30 centimeters. That's a decent sized fish. He's pretty good, pretty cool. In addition to having these enlarged fins that allow for flight, they also have a different tail fin, and this helps as well. They have a tail fin in which the top bit of the tail fin is smaller and the bottom is larger, and this allows for a thing called taxiing, which I'll get into in a bit, which helps them with flight as well. So how do flying fish actually fly? Great question, and it's quite interesting. The fish is swimming along in the water, doing regular fish stuff, right? No one would know a thing, because it's got its fins, which it uses to fly. They've got it tucked into their body at this moment, curled up. No one would suspect a thing that he's about to do something crazy. So it's swimming along, about 30 k's an hour. It approaches the surface. It breaks through the surface, unfolds its wings, and it gets up into the air, but it's not gliding yet. No, it does this thing called taxiing first. Ooh, what is that? So this is when it uses the longer underneath bit of its tail to dip that just into the water. The rest of its whole body is out of the water, and it's like one of those hydrofoil things, the cool kids go on and they're standing on them and they're bouncing in the water and the whole board is out of the water, but just the tip of the fin is in the water and they can somehow zoom around and stuff. Yeah, it's pretty much just like that. So they have their tail just dipped in and they start beating their tail real fast, 50 times a second or something ridiculous like that. And then in this taxiing phase, they can achieve much greater speeds because their whole body's pretty much outside the water, right? So they have a lot less drag because they're in air as opposed to water. So they're wiggling their tail real fast. They can accelerate, and once they build up even more speed, they can start to glide. Wow, and they're gliding. And they can glide up to speeds of 70 k's an hour. Whew, these guys are zooming. The highest height that they can reach is about 8 meters, but mostly they stick quite close to the water and just glide along like parallel to the water. And once they've glided for some time, they can just dip that little bit of their tail in the water and start beating it again, doing this taxiing thing. Re-accelerates, and then they can zoom off and do some more gliding. So the longest flight that a flying fish has done with this like taxiing, then gliding and taxiing again, is like 400 meters. It's done it for like 45 seconds. So it can go for quite a long time between these two different things before it has to like resubmerge and like become a fish again. So when it enters the water again, it folds up its fins again and it's like, no one saw anything, I'm just a fish, I just swimming around doing fish things. Okay, so this sounds very fun, sounds like a great time flying around, being a flying fish, but why do they do it? Just for fun? Probably not just for fun. It's not 100% certain on the reason why they do this, but the main thought is that it is to avoid predators in the ocean, such as bigger fish. So a good way to avoid other fish in the ocean is to get out of the ocean. So they do this, and again, they can escape these bigger predators. So that works fantastically for them. Unfortunately, so they do well to escape the ocean predators. They get out of the ocean. They're in the air, safe from the bigger fish, until a bird comes along and eats the poor fish. Its main predators are fish, but also birds. This poor thing can't catch a break. It's getting chased in the water, it escapes into the air, and then gets snatched by a bird. It is very sad. I guess there's generally more fish hunting them than birds, so I guess it's still probably better to actually fly out of the ocean. But another reason why they might be coming out of the ocean is, as we said before, they're swimming along at the speed, they go about like 30 k's an hour in the water, but if they zoom up out of the water, they can get up to 70 k's an hour. So it's a lot faster, obviously, because there's less drag in the air. So some studies have said that another reason that they fly is to increase their speed when they're traveling long distances. Very smart fish move. Very nice. Okay, so how do people study flying fish? I mean, you can just go out on a boat maybe and like look at them flying around, but that's kind of hard to find them. They're pretty fast. You have to go in the ocean, which is, there was one study where they got a bunch of flying fish, they caught them, they killed them. Oh no, poor fish. They stuffed these fish with foam, and then put them in a wind tunnel. So yes, they put a flying fish in a wind tunnel filled with foam. For why? To look at the aerodynamics of a flying fish. So they did find out some fun things about flying fish from having it in the wind tunnel, seeing the air flow over these fish. Looks a bit funny. They found that the fish get the most lift at an angle of about 30 to 35 degrees, and this is the angle that they come out of the water, because obviously they need to have some lift to come up. Yep. But then they found out to get the best lift to drag ratio, you want to be pretty much parallel 0 to 5 degrees along the ocean, and this is how they fly. Very smart fish. They worked this out themselves. They didn't have to go into a wind tunnel themselves to figure it out. What I found most interesting about the study is that they found that flying fish take advantage of something called ground effect. Ooh, the effect of the ground. Is it good? Yes. So, what ground effect is it's an aerodynamic thing, which, is a little bit more complex than what I can find out in a couple of days. But what I found out, which is probably very basic, anything that has a wing, a flying fish, a plane, etc. If you're just flying around in air, there's no ground, because the wing, there is a high pressure zone underneath the wing and a low pressure zone on top of the wing. The air wants to go from the high pressure to the low pressure, so it's going to zoop around the wing, and when it does this, it creates these vortices, and so they're like spiraling out behind the wings. So these vortices pretty much cause a thing called downwash, and this increases the drag. And obviously, if you want to fly, having more drag is probably not a good thing. But when you get close to the ground, when these vortices come off around the tips of the wing, they can't form a nice circle. They come down and they hit the ground. Ooh, and this like spreads them out into more like an ellipses sort of thing, and this results in less downwash, therefore less drag. So fly better, yes. Please don't take my word for this. I don't really understand it. I think that's how it works. Pretty much, if you get close to the ground, you fly better. So you notice this when you're like in a plane and you're coming into land, and it seems like you just like float before you land, like forever. That's because when the plane gets close to the ground, it experiences less drag, and so you're just kind of floating there, and it's, you know, doing its things. So this is because of ground effect. To take advantage of this effect, you sort of need to be in about one wingspan above the ground, and somehow flying fish have figured this all out. They know more physics than I do. I mean, I get it, I don't know much physics. Flying fish are pretty smart. So they take advantage of this. The flying fish, they fly pretty low to the ground, and they get this ground effect added bonus. So there's less drag and they can fly further. Very smart. Good work, flying fish. So there's been a few studies where people are trying to make a robot flying fish. That sounds quite interesting. They say that this could be quite useful in exploring and mapping, maybe surveillance. Who knows, you could use it as a weapon. Imagine that, a flying fish coming for you. Whew, spooky. It doesn't seem like they have quite successfully done this yet. I just wanted to show this image of someone yeeting a flying fish model into the water. I don't know what they're doing, but yeah, this was entertaining. They've also used robot models to get more insight into how flying fish work and like how the aerodynamics work around them and stuff. This one study, they showed that depending on the angle of the pelvic fin determines whether they have more stability or if they have more lift. So they found out there's a trade-off between stability and lift. So yeah, it really seems like the flying fish is pretty smart. It figures out all these things. Didn't even have to make a robot of itself to figure it out. So I try not to get too political on my channel, but you know, when we're talking about flying fish, how can we not? Rihanna and Nicki Minaj, they beefing over flying fish. I think there was some post on Instagram or something. They said like, Bargains don't like Trinis and Trinis don't like Bargains. They draw a line in the ocean over flying fish. Whew, heated. Rihanna is from Barbados and Nicki Minaj from Trinidad. Whew, it's intense there. What is going on? The flying fish is a very important fish in Barbados. They're on the dollar coin. They're a very important and like significant cultural meal to eat a flying fish in some sort of dish. So that's very fun. But there's this thing called climate change, right? I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a thing. It's real, I promise you as well. The waters, the temperatures and whatnot, they're changing. So the flying fish are changing their migration patterns. Now, instead of chilling around Barbados where they used to and hang out and have a good time being a favorite dish, now they're moving more south towards Trinidad. I see, okay. This is causing a bit of beef between the two countries, right? Because the Bargains, I think that's what they're called, they want their flying fish, so they're going down and like fishing for it. But then the Trinis, I think that is also what it's called, they're like, you can't come into our water, it's our water. So we're gonna have the flying fish. You know, people have got different sized boats. There's a whole thing, and yeah, it's just getting a bit heated where people are allowed to fish and whose waters, and you know, it's a significant thing to the Barbados culture, this flying fish, but now they've just like decided to not swim around there. So yeah, and very intense stuff, and the issue is still not resolved today, so it's still heated. Clearly very important if Rihanna and Nicki are talking about it. But yeah, so pretty much climate change is having an effect on where these flying fish are hanging out, and that's just, you know, it's causing beef. Crazy. So yes, flying fish, they're very fun, very cool. They fly? Not really, they just glide. 70k an hour flying. How good. They can dip their tail in, wiggle it around lots of times, like a hydrofoil, and they can go up and fly again. They can evade predators in the water, but then get eaten by birds, so they're not really living their best life. But yes, very cool fish, would recommend being a fish. Yep, okay, bye.